When I spotted a stranded car during a fierce thunderstorm and decided to land my small plane to help, I thought I was just doing what any decent pilot would do. I had no idea the elderly woman I rescued was racing to see her son receive his first star as a general, or that my simple act of kindness would earn me an F-16 escort and a place of honor among military heroes. I will never forget that. The day that changed my life. Hi everyone, welcome to Life's Changing Stories. Now let's dive into today's story. Marcus Thompson was 58 years old and had spent the better part of 3 decades making his living in the skies above Nevada's high desert. Every morning, he'd pre-flight his trusty Cessna 182, a plane he'd bought 20 years ago when he'd finally saved enough to start Thompson Charter Services. The aircraft had over 8,000 hours on it now, every rivet and bolt as familiar to Marcus as his own heartbeat. Most days were routine, flying businessmen to meetings in Reno, taking tourists on scenic flights over Lake Tahoe, or providing flight instruction to eager student pilots at the small airport outside Carson City. Marcus had logged over 15,000 flight hours in everything from tiny 2-seaters to twin-engine cargo planes. He'd flown in mountain weather that would ground commercial airlines, navigated through desert dust storms that turned day to night, and once even landed on a highway to help evacuate victims from a flash flood. His logbook read like an adventure novel, filled with emergency landings, medical evacuations, and countless acts of service to his community. But Marcus was content with his life, finding joy in what others might consider mundane. There was something deeply satisfying about watching a nervous student nail their first solo landing, or seeing a businessman's face light up as they soared over the Sierra Nevada mountains. Flying had been Marcus's dream since childhood, when his father, a Korean War veteran and former Air Force mechanic, had taken him to air shows and filled his head with stories of military aviation. Those weekends at Nellis Air Force Base, watching the Thunderbirds practice their precision formations, had planted a seed that never stopped growing. Initially, Marcus had planned to follow his father's footsteps into the Air Force, dreaming of flying fighter jets and serving his country. But when his father died unexpectedly during Marcus's senior year of high school, someone needed to help his mother keep the family's small aviation business afloat. Dreams of military jets had given way to charter flights and flight instruction, but the old spark of wonder still ignited every time he heard the distant roar of military aircraft from nearby Fallon Naval Air Station. Over the years, Marcus had built a reputation in the tight-knit aviation community as the pilot who'd fly when others wouldn't. When storms grounded commercial flights, when mountain weather turned dangerous, when someone needed to reach a remote location in challenging conditions, they called Thompson Charter. Marcus understood that in rural Nevada, where distances were vast and weather could change in minutes, everyone depended on each other. The day that changed everything started like any other late summer afternoon. Marcus had just finished giving a lesson to Sarah, a local college student working toward her private pilot license, when he noticed the weather deteriorating faster than the forecast had predicted. Dark thunderheads were building over the mountains, and the wind was picking up significantly. He'd planned one more short charter flight, taking a businessman to a meeting in Reno. But as he watched the storm cells developing, Marcus made the decision to cancel and get his plane secured. Safety always came first, a lesson his father had drilled into him years ago. As Marcus banked his Cessna to return to Carson City Airport, something caught his eye on the desolate highway below. A dark sedan sat on the shoulder of the road with its hazard lights blinking, and he could see someone waving what looked like a white cloth or scarf. In this remote area, with the storm approaching and cell service spotty at best, being stranded could quickly become dangerous. Marcus keyed his radio. "Carson Tower, This is November 749 Delta. I've got a vehicle in distress on Highway 50, about 15 miles east of the airport. I'm going to investigate. Roger, 9 Delta. Be advised, severe weather moving in from the west. Recommend expediting any ground operations. Marcus spotted a relatively flat stretch of desert alongside the highway that looked suitable for landing. It wasn't ideal. The ground was uneven and there was scattered sagebrush, but his Cessna was built for rough conditions and he'd landed in worse places during his years of charter work. The landing was bumpier than he preferred, the plane bouncing slightly as the wheels touched down on the hard-packed desert floor. Sagebrush scraped against the landing gear, and Marcus had to use full rudder to keep the plane tracking straight in the crosswind. As Marcus taxied toward the stranded vehicle, kicking up a cloud of dust behind him, he could see an elderly woman standing beside the sedan, using a white cardigan to shield herself from the increasingly fierce wind. Lightning was beginning to flicker in the distance, and Marcus knew they had maybe 20 minutes before the storm hit with full force. Even in distress, the woman carried herself with unmistakable dignity. She appeared to be in her 70s, with silver hair that had been carefully styled that morning but was now being whipped by the desert wind. Her elegant clothing, a navy blue dress suit with matching shoes, seemed completely out of place on this remote Nevada highway. The sedan was clearly expensive, a late-model Cadillac with government license plates and what looked like official decals on the rear window. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Marcus called out as he shut down his engine and climbed from the cockpit, having to raise his voice over the howling wind. "Oh, thank goodness," the woman replied, her voice carrying a slight Irish accent and the refined tone of education. "I'm Catherine O'Brien. My GPS sent me this route as a shortcut to avoid construction on the interstate, but the engine just died about 20 minutes ago. I've been trying to call for help, but there's no cell service out here." "Where were you headed?" Marcus asked, noting the urgency in her voice. Catherine's eyes filled with worry. "Nellis Air Force Base. My son is receiving his first star today, being promoted to general. I promised I'd be there for the ceremony, and I'm already running late." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the approaching storm. Nellis was over 400 miles away, and with the weather deteriorating, commercial flights would likely be grounded. "What's your son's name, if you don't mind me asking?" "Patrick O'Brien," Catherine said, checking her phone again for signal. "He's been in the Air Force for 30 years. Today's ceremony was supposed to be the culmination of everything he's worked for." The name was familiar to Marcus. He'd read about Colonel Patrick O'Brien in military aviation magazines, decorated pilot who'd led a daring rescue mission in Afghanistan, saving 3 downed airmen under heavy fire. If this was the same officer, he was one of the Air Force's most respected leaders. "Mrs. O'Brien," Marcus said, making a quick decision. "I can't get you to Nellis tonight. This storm's going to ground everything for hours. But I can take you to my place to wait it out, and first thing in the morning, I'll fly you as close to the base as I can get. There's a small airport about 50 miles from Nellis where I can land." Catherine's relief was palpable. "You'd do that for a stranger?" "Ma'am, if my father were receiving the Medal of Honor and I needed help getting there, I'd hope someone would do the same for me." The flight to Marcus's small ranch took only 15 minutes, but it was a rough ride as the storm intensified. Catherine gripped her seat, but remained calm, impressing Marcus with her composure as they bounced through turbulence that would have terrified most passengers. His wife, Linda, was waiting at their small private airstrip when they landed, having seen the plane approaching on their security monitors. "Marcus, what in the world?" Linda started, then saw Catherine climbing out of the passenger seat, looking shaken but dignified despite her ordeal. "Linda, this is Mrs. O'Brien. Her car broke down in the middle of nowhere, and she needs to get to Nellis in the morning for her son's promotion ceremony." Linda immediately shifted into hostess mode, guiding Catherine into their warm ranch house and insisting she change into dry clothes. Their home was modest but comfortable, a testament to 30 years of hard work and careful saving. As Catherine warmed herself by the stone fireplace with a cup of hot coffee, Marcus tried calling Nellis Air Force Base to let them know where Catherine was, but the storm had knocked out phone service throughout the region. Over dinner, Catherine shared stories about Patrick's childhood, how he'd built model airplanes from the time he could hold glue, how he'd earned his pilot's license at 17, and how he'd graduated at the top of his class from the Air Force Academy. Linda, a former teacher, was fascinated by Catherine's tales of raising a son destined for military greatness, while Marcus found himself drawn into conversations about aviation and service. Patrick always said he wanted to be like his grandfather, Catherine explained, showing them photos on her phone of a young man in a World War II Army Air Corps uniform. My father flew B-17s over Europe, shot down twice, captured once, but he always made it home. Patrick carries his dog tags with him on every mission. The weather should clear by dawn, Marcus told Catherine as he studied the radar on his laptop. I'll have you airborne by 6 a.m. and we'll be at Henderson Executive Airport by 8. From there, it's just a short drive to Nellis. Catherine's eyes filled with gratitude. I can't thank you enough. Patrick would be devastated if I missed this. He's already lost so much. His father passed 5 years ago, and he's never married. The military is his whole life. The next morning dawned crystal clear, the storm having scrubbed the desert air clean. Marcus was at his plane before sunrise, going through his pre-flight checklist with even more care than usual. This wasn't just another charter flight. This was about getting a mother to her son's most important day. As he finished his inspection, Linda came running from the house, waving her phone. Marcus, the cell towers are back up. There are news alerts everywhere about General O'Brien's promotion ceremony. They're saying his mother never arrived last night, and they're concerned about her safety. Marcus's eyes widened as the full significance hit him. This wasn't just any promotion ceremony. Patrick O'Brien was becoming one of the youngest generals in recent Air Force history, and the media was covering it extensively. Mrs. O'Brien, Marcus called as he helped her into the passenger seat. I think your son might be a little worried about you. He's probably beside himself, Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. Patrick's always been a worrier, even as a little boy. It's part of what makes him such a good officer. He never leaves anyone behind. The takeoff was smooth, and Marcus kept the Cessna low, following the familiar contours of the Nevada landscape. The morning air was calm and clear, perfect flying conditions after the previous night's storm. Catherine seemed more relaxed now, watching the desert scenery pass below them and sharing stories about Patrick's childhood and military career. 20 minutes from Henderson Executive Airport, Marcus's radio crackled to life with an unfamiliar voice. Unknown aircraft, this is Nellis Approach Control. You are heading toward restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately and state your intentions. Marcus keyed his microphone. Nellis Approach, this is Cessna, November 749 Delta, requesting clearance to Henderson Executive. I'm a charter pilot with a passenger who needs to reach Nellis Air Force Base. 9 Delta, you are ordered to alter course immediately. You have entered restricted airspace without proper clearance. Suddenly, 2 dark shapes streaked past Marcus's wings, F-16 Fighting Falcons, one on each side of his small Cessna. Marcus's heart nearly stopped. In 30 years of flying, he'd never seen anything so simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. Cessna 9 Delta, the radio crackled again, the voice carrying unmistakable authority. You are ordered to follow our escort and land at Nellis Air Force Base immediately. Catherine reached for the spare headset Marcus kept for passengers. This is Catherine O'Brien, she said calmly into the microphone. Is my son throwing one of his fits again? The radio went silent for a long moment. Then a different voice came through, younger and filled with emotion. "Mom? Mom, is that really you? What happened? We've been searching all night." "Patrick, darling, I'm fine," Catherine replied, tears streaming down her face. "This wonderful man rescued me when my car broke down. We're in his airplane." What happened next felt almost like a dream to Marcus. The F-16s, unable to match the Cessna's slow speed, took turns making gentle circles around them, creating an improvised honor escort as they guided the small plane toward Nellis. As they approached the base, Marcus could see a full honor guard assembled on the tarmac, along with what appeared to be dozens of high-ranking officers. Despite his hands shaking with adrenaline, Marcus performed one of the smoothest landings of his career, touching down on the main runway of one of America's premier air bases. As the Cessna rolled to a stop, a tall figure in dress blues broke from the waiting crowd and ran toward the plane. General Patrick O'Brien helped his mother from the aircraft, embracing her tightly as cameras flashed around them. "Mom, I was so worried. When you didn't arrive last night and we couldn't reach you." "I'm here now, sweetheart," Catherine said, smoothing his uniform jacket. "And I have this brave pilot to thank for it." General O'Brien turned to Marcus, who was still somewhat stunned by the surreal nature of the situation. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you for bringing my mother safely here. That was some impressive flying for a civilian pilot." One of the F-16 pilots, still in his flight suit, approached the group. "General, this guy handled those crosswinds like a pro. Most civilian pilots would have been shaking too hard to land straight." Marcus found his voice. "Well, when you've spent 20 years dodging dust devils and mountain drafts, you learn to handle whatever the air throws at you." Everyone laughed, and Marcus felt some of his nervousness fade. These were just people, he realized. Highly trained, dedicated people who happened to wear uniforms and fly multi-million-dollar aircraft. "Mr. Thompson," General O'Brien said formally, "I'd like to invite you to be our honored guest at this morning's ceremony. Any man who'd go out of his way to help a stranger deserves to be recognized." The ceremony was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Seated in the front row with dignitaries and high-ranking officials, he watched as Patrick O'Brien officially became General O'Brien, the culmination of 3 decades of dedicated service. The base chapel was filled with hundreds of military personnel, their dress uniforms creating a sea of blue and silver. When the chaplain spoke about service and sacrifice, Marcus thought about his father and all the dreams deferred in service of others. The moment that made it all worthwhile was seeing the pride in Catherine's eyes as she watched her son achieve his dream. When the new general received his first salute, tears streamed down her face, and Marcus found his own eyes misting over. This was what service looked like. Not just the man in uniform, but the family who'd supported him every step of the way. After the ceremony, General O'Brien gave Marcus a personal tour of the base, including a close-up look at the F-16s that had escorted them in. Standing in the cockpit of a fighter jet, surrounded by technology that represented the pinnacle of aviation achievement, Marcus felt a connection to the dreams he'd set aside years ago. The instruments were incredibly sophisticated compared to his simple Cessna, but the basic principles were the same: lift, thrust, drag, and weight. The fundamentals his father had taught him still applied, even at 30,000 feet, traveling at twice the speed of sound. "These birds can pull 9 Gs in a turn," the F-16 pilot explained, noting Marcus's fascination with the aircraft. "Takes years of training just to handle the physical stress, never mind learning all the systems." Marcus nodded appreciatively. "Different world from crop dusting, that's for sure. Though I imagine the principles of reading wind and weather are pretty similar." "More than you'd think," the pilot agreed. "Good flying is good flying, whether you're in a Cessna or a fighter jet. You know, General O'Brien said with a grin. "You could dust a whole lot of crops with one of these." Marcus laughed. "Maybe so, but my Cessna doesn't require quite so much paperwork to fuel up." The flight home was peaceful, with Catherine insisting on riding along to meet Linda and properly thank the family who'd opened their home to a stranger. As they approached the small ranch airstrip, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had started with a simple decision to help someone in need. Today, Marcus still flies his Cessna over Nevada's high desert, providing charter services and flight instruction to anyone who needs it. His grandchildren never tire of hearing about the morning their grandfather's small plane flew alongside F-16 fighters, and the photos on his office wall showing his yellow Cessna surrounded by sleek military aircraft serve as a constant reminder of that incredible day. But the story Catherine tells her grandchildren focuses on different details. Yes, she mentions the dramatic rescue and the military escort, but her version centers on Marcus, a man who saw a stranger in need and didn't hesitate to help. She always ends by saying, "In a world that asks, 'What's in it for me?' Marcus simply asked, 'What do you need?'" The friendship that developed between the Thompson and O'Brien families has lasted for years, built on the understanding that life's most meaningful moments often begin with the smallest acts of kindness. And every time Marcus hears the roar of military aircraft overhead, he's reminded that sometimes the greatest adventures start with nothing more than the decision to help someone lost in a storm. Marcus learned that day that dreams don't always unfold the way we expect them to. He'd given up his military aviation aspirations to help his family, but in the end, his willingness to serve others in his own way had earned him something far more valuable than wings and ribbons, the respect of heroes and the knowledge that his choices had made a real difference in the world. We hope you enjoyed today's story of love, life, and betrayal. For more free stories and entertainment from our channel, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe with notifications.